Gittin Daf Samach Zayin concludes the sixth parak. Parak Omer begins the seventh parak. Misha Achazu. So the end of parak Omer is discussing the concept of Omer Imru. That's if somebody makes a shliach to tell other people to do something. Makes a shliach to make a shliach. Now we're discussing the opinion of Shmuel, who the Gemara says passes like Rabbi Yasi, who says that generally a shliach is only allowed to make another shliach if he's giving him some object. If he's just giving him instructions, he's not allowed to. The question is, can he do that if the husband, the original Mishalech, originally said, go make another shliach? So the Gemara has said that Shmuel, in passing like Rabbi Yossi, holds that you can do that. Now the Gemara is going to bring a proof that you cannot do that. And the proof comes from a Mishnah and a couple of comments on the Mishnah. So the Mishnah discusses ksav sefer, that is, if a sefer writes a get. So the Mishnah says that if a sefer writes the get and another witness signs, then it's kosher. So the Gemara explains this doesn't mean that the sefer writes it, it means that the sefer signs it. So what this Mishnah is telling us is that a sefer, together with another aid, is allowed to sign the get. The person who wrote the get is also allowed to sign the get. Now the Gemara explained that this only makes sense according to Rabbi Yossi's opinion, and that's because if you don't hold of Rabbi Yossi's opinion, that means that you hold that a shliach is allowed to appoint others to do the job. If that's true, so then when the husband originally tells a shliach to go do a job, to go create the get, he may go hire others, and he also may go hire the sefer. Now, you may have the following problematic scenario. The husband tells the shliach, go hire 2 witnesses to sign and a sefer to write, and that sefer is not supposed to be one of the witnesses. Now, this shliach is going to feel bad for the sefer, because by appointing him to write and then not letting him sign, you're indicating that he's not good enough to sign. He's not a valid witness, which is a special higher level of chashiva. So therefore, he's going to have the sefer be one of the 2 to sign. That would be a pasul get, because the husband didn't say that. The husband did not allow that. The husband wanted 2 other people to sign. Now, the simple way of avoiding that would be to make a rule that you cannot have a sefer sign under any circumstances, and then there's no problem of the shliach telling 2 other people to sign, because we have a halacha that the sefer is not allowed to sign. The only possibility to avoid this otherwise is to have that the sefer knows that he can never be appointed by a shliach, that the shliach cannot appoint other people to do it. So if you're in Rabbi Yossi's opinion that you cannot pass along instructions, so then a sefer knows he can never be given instructions from the husband, and therefore he can never be appointed to sign, and he'll never sign. He'll never be asked to sign unless the husband himself asks him to. There's no situation in which the shliach will go ask him to because he feels bad for him that he's being insulted, because the sefer will know he can never get instructions from the shliach. He's got to get instructions from the husband directly. So Mara asks if Rabbi Yossi agrees that in the case where the husband told him, go make another shliach, that you're allowed to have the shliach pass along shlichos. If it's Omer Imru, he's allowed to ask someone else to do it. He is allowed to give over instructions to another. So then this problem comes right back again. Because, again, the sefer can sign if the husband told the shliach, find 2 other people. You can have that exact problem. And therefore, there'll be no explanation as to why this Mishnah is not a problem. Why does this Mishnah allow the sefer to sign? You could have a situation where the sefer will sign because the shliach feels bad for him, even though he wasn't allowed to. So the Gemara answers this kasha. The Gemara says, no, we're going to see soon that even though this is a kosher get, you're not supposed to do it. Since you're not supposed to do it, it's uncommon. It's uncommon that people do something they're not supposed to do. We don't have to make a gzeira in an uncommon situation. So now the Gemara discusses a slight variation where we'll see a machlekes if you're allowed to, if you're allowed to do it or not, and that's where the husband tells 2 shlichim. He says, you people sign and find someone else to write the get. Now, instead of telling them to go get someone else to sign, he's telling them you sign and get a shliach and get a sefer to write the get, and then you'll sign it. So in that case, you could have the same problem. They may feel bad for the sefer that he's not being asked to sign. They may ask him to sign, and again, it's a pasul get because the husband didn't appoint the sefer to be able to sign the get for him. So the Gemara says here also it's like shliach, it's uncommon because you're not supposed to do it. The Gemara says no, but it's a machlekes if you're supposed to do it or not, as we shall see soon. What are you going to do according to the opinion that says you are allowed to do it? So the Gemara says you're right, therefore we have to change our understanding of Rabbi Yosi. Rabbi Yosi holds there is no such thing as Amar Imra. Amar Imra is not allowed. But our entire discussion was in Shmuel. Shmuel holds like Rabbi Yosi in one. He holds that you cannot give over instructions, but he disagrees with Rabbi Yosi, and he holds that you are allowed to give over instructions if the husband specifically told to give over instructions, that the concept of Imru is okay. And since our entire discussion in the last daf was about Shmuel, so that resolves it. The Gemara now discusses the halacha about giving over instructions altogether. So the Gemara says that we said before that Shmuel said the name of Rebbe, the halachas of Rabbi Yosi, that you are not allowed to give over instructions to a second shliach. So the Gemara says that Rav Shimon ben Rebbe said that Rebbe was his father. He said, since Reb Meir and Reb Chanina Ish'ina disagree with Rabbi Yosi, why do you pass on like Rabbi Yosi in this halacha? So Rebbe said to him, be silent, my son, be silent. If you would have seen Rabbi Yosi, you would not ask this question, because Rabbi Yosi always had his reasons with him, and he always had good reasons for everything, and he explained his reasons. Now the Gemara quotes a brisa, which is quoted in Avos Rabbi Nassan, which discusses descriptions and comparisons that Isi ben Yehuda made about various Talmidei Chachamim to say what their praise was. So it says that Reb Meir was a Chacham, he was very wise, and he was also a Sefer. Reb Yehuda was a Chacham when he chose to be. So this is B'chak Zushanim what that means when he chose to be. Rashi says when he chose to choose his words carefully. The Aruch says it means that even under very pressing and difficult circumstances, he was able to choose to focus, and he was able to be a chacham under all circumstances. Rabbi Tarfon is like a pile of nuts. Rashi explains that means if you pull out one nut, the entire pile comes falling on your head. Same thing is true about Rabbi Tarfon. If you would ask him to bring a riot to something, or you would ask him a question, he would bring many rayas and sources and all kinds of things. Now Rabbi Shmuel is considered to be a well-stocked store. That is, anything you need, he has. Mekayros, rayas, proofs from Chumash, Mishnah, Gemara, it's all there. Rabbi Kiva is a storehouse divided into sections. Gemara says that he would learn everything all at once. He would learn in a mishmash of all the various different sources. Then he would compartmentalize them when he reviewed it, and he would have it stored separately in his mind. Rechlan ben Nuri is called Kupas HaRechlim. He's called the storage of the peddlers, that they have various different kinds of spices and wares, whatever you ask him for, he has, but he also has them ready and separate. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, he learned it separately and he kept them separate. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah similarly is called that. It's called a storage of spices. About Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, it says that his learning is kavanaki, it's small and it's clear, meaning that he didn't learn as much as maybe others would have, but every halacha that he says, the halacha is like him. Rabbi Yosi always has his reasons with him. That's what our Gemara was referring to. Rabbi Shimon grinds a lot and leaves out a little bit. The Gemara explains in a brisa that means that he learns a lot and he only forgets a little bit, and everything that he forgets is the bad stuff. I mean, he forgets things that are not the halacha. And that's what Rav Shimon said to his Talmidim, my children, learn my midas, meaning learn my teachings, because they are the cream of the teachings of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva was the Rebbe of Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Shimon, as if he went through it and took out the best stuff twice, because he forgot the things which are not halachic. Now the Gemara goes into the discussion we had before about whether or not you're allowed to have the husband tell a shliach to make other shlichim, or them themselves to be the shlichim and have another sefer with them. So the Gemara says, we said before, that if the husband says to two people, go tell the sefer that he should write, and then go tell two other people and they should sign. So Rav Huna says, that's kosher, but you should not do it in Yisrael. So Ula said to Rav Nachman, or perhaps Rav Nachman said to Ula, since it's kosher, what's the problem? So Mark explains, because we're afraid that if you allow witnesses, if you allow shlichim to go hire other edim, you may have the wife hire false witnesses, and they will go pretend to be witnesses of the husband and go hire edim and have them hire a sefer to write and to sign. So therefore, you only want the husband appointing people directly. You don't want a middleman. So we're asking for brisa that says if you have signatures on a get or on a star, you don't have to be afraid that they're falsified, as long as you can establish that they were signed by the person who it says. You don't have to be afraid that he lied and he made up the story. So how come here we're afraid that a story is made up? So it says people won't sign falsely, but they will speak falsely. They will tell other people to go do, and they'll hire others. So if all they have to do is talk, then they could potentially be hired to be falsified. Now, the Gemara discusses, do you have a similar concern in a case where the husband tells Shechem, you guys sign, hire a sefer to write it, and you guys sign yourself? Here you don't have that concern, there's no middleman, but perhaps you should make Gzeira to the other case which we said before. Similar quotes 3 sets of machlekes on this. Chiz says it's kosher, but you should not do it. Rabbi Rechana says it's okay to do, you don't have a Gzeira. Menachem says it's kosher, you should not do it. Rav Sheshes says you could do it. And about Rabbi and Rav Yosef, there's two versions as to who said what, but you have the same machlokes, are you allowed to do it or not? The Gemara now refers back to the Mishnah where we started with Sugya, and that is if somebody said to a large group of people to write or to bring a get to his wife. So the Gemara quotes a Brisa. Brisa says if somebody says to 10 people, write a get for my wife, only one of them has to write it, he does it for all of them. If, however, he says all of you guys write, so then they all have to be present, and one person writes it in the presence of all of them, it's like they all wrote it. Now about bringing the get, so the same halacha, if he says to a group of 10, bring a get to my wife, only one has to do it, and he does it for all of them. If, however, he says all of you bring it, so again, only one has to carry it, but they all 10 have to go together and bring the get. Now the Gemara asks, what happens if he doesn't say all of you, but he numbers them off? He says you and you and you, or he says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, you guys bring the get. He doesn't say kulchem, doesn't say all of you. So Rav Huna says, counting them each in counts as if he says all of them. Rav Yochanan says in the name of Rabbi Elazar of Rome, it does not count as all of them. One says not a machlokes. One is talking about where he listed everybody in the group, and one is talking about where he only listed some of the people in the group. Now, which one's which? Which is the one where they should all go, and which is the one where they shouldn't all go? Is where he listed all of them or some of them. So Gemara says it's a machlokes. Which one's which? There's a reason to say both sides. Now, if you say he only listed some of them, there's two ways of understanding that. You could say he obviously wanted only these guys to go, so these are the guys that have to go. Or you could say he intended to list all of them, and then he realized that it was too difficult for them all to go, so he changed his mind, and he doesn't need any of them to go. He just needs the one or the minimum, and therefore you don't even have to have the ones that he listed to go. You could also say it the other way. When he listed the entire group, you could say that he meant for the entire group specifically to go because he never backed down, he never changed his mind. Or you could say, no, he was just listing, but he did not mean for every single person to be involved, they should go themselves. All right, now the Gemara discusses that there should be a standard form which should avoid problems. That is, in a situation where a husband said to write a get or to sign a get or to bring a get, he said in front of a bunch of people, people may get confused, or they may know that he said it to a group and think the entire group has to do it, but if he only meant for some of them to do it, then people will say, well, if only some of them did it, it must be possible because he told all of them. So we want to have a record of what happened exactly. Someone says, Rabbi Yehuda said you should write it into the get clearly. You should write, if there's a bunch of people there, you should write, the husband told us, write a get, either all of you or any one of you. If he said sign the get, he said either all of you or any two of you. If he said bring the get, either all of you or any one of you. You should specify in there that the husband was not makbid on having the entire group do it, so people should know that it's okay. Now, Rava asked, though, that it's possible that he's not going to write out the whole thing. If you make him write a whole speech, that we were in a group and the husband said all of you or some of you, then you're not going to write the whole thing. It's going to be missing. You're going to be missing the essential part that you want there, which is that it could be even some of you. So therefore, you should just write, the husband said, any of you write the get, two of you sign the get, or one of you bring the get, even though we were a group. So you should not have that. You could leave out the essential part that he allowed only part of it. So this concludes Perek Omer. Now we begin Perek Misha Achazu. The Gemara begins with a discussion of a type of condition called kordaikis, which the Gemara will define, where a person loses his head and what he says is not reliable. And we're going to get into 3 blot discussing agarita and a list of cures that the Gemara has. So Gemara says that somebody who was struck by kordaikis and he says, right, to get to my wife, you don't listen to him because he's not in his right mind. And the same applies if he retracts while he's under the influence of kordaikis. If he says write a get while he's healthy, then he gets kordaikis and he changes his mind and says, no, don't write it, you don't cancel, because that if he's canceling doesn't count at all. Now, if somebody is mute, not because of kardaikas, but he cannot speak. And they say to him, should we write a get for your wife? And he nods. So we have to check to make sure that he's understanding us and we're understanding him. So we ask him 6 questions. 3 of them, the answer is yes. 3 of the answer is no, that are unrelated to a get, where we know the answer. And if he nods, we're supposed to nod. If he shakes his head no, we're supposed to shake his head no. Then we understand we're communicating, and we could follow his nods and his instructions based on that. All right. Now the Gemara begins, what's kardaikas? So the Gemara says kardaikas is a condition that happens where a shade, a kind of demon, strikes people if they drink too much grape juice. That's what Shmuel says. So the Gemara says, so then why is it called kardaikas? It should just be called that if a person is struck by grape juice. So Gemara says that we want to teach that the name of the shade is kardaikas. You need to know that, because if you're going to write a kamea, you're going to write an amulet to try to drive the shade away, then you got to put the name in there. Now there is a practical cure for this condition. The Gemara says he should eat lean meat that's grilled over coals and wine that has a lot of water in it. Too much water, watered down wine. The Gemara goes into some other cures. Abai says that my adoptive mother told me that there is another cure that used the same thing, and this is one of the many cures for sunstroke. Somebody's eating the sun too much and he gets a very high fever. So Abai listed, if it's on the first day that he got it, then he should just drink a cup of water. If it's the second day of this sunstroke, he should let blood. If it's the third day, then that's what we were discussing. He should have lean meat and watered down wine. The meat should be grilled over coals. If it's been for more than 3 days, for a while, then he should bring a black chicken, cut it open lengthwise and crossways, shave the middle of the person who's sick, shave his head, put the chicken on it, and leave it there until it sticks to it. Then he should go into the river, stand in the water until he feels like he's about to faint, then swim to the side and come sit on the side until he feels better. If that doesn't work, or if he can't do it, then he should eat a lot of karti, he should eat a lot of leek, go stand in the water up to his neck until he feels like he's going to faint, then go swim to the side and sit, and then that should be enough. Now, this is the opposite for somebody who has a cold. If he was too cold, or he had frostbite, or he was overly cold instead of being overly heated, then he should do the opposite. He should have fatty meat that's grilled on coals, and he should drink wine that has not had the right amount of water. Usually wine in the days of Chazal had to be watered down 3 parts to 1. This should be undiluted wine. So Gemara brings a story that happened with Avram Chasida, Avram the Tzaddik. So Gemara says that the household of the Reish Galusa were persecuting him. He used to give piskei halacha that they weren't happy with, so they gave him a hard time. So they once made him sleep in the snow, and then he got a chill. So he knew that he needed to have the fatty meat and the undiluted wine. So they came, and he was in the building, and they asked him, what would you like to eat? So he said, whatever I want, they're going to bring me the opposite. So he said, I want lean meat, grilled on coals, and watered down wine. And of course, they brought him fatty meat and undiluted wine, and then he got